gather together, we take a moment to reflect on the privilege of being here in the Lekwungen territories of the Saanich and the, I got it blanked, and the Songhees of the Squamish Nations. And when we do our territorial acknowledgements, we think of both the land and the sea and the generosity of the nations in permitting us these opportunities to work together with them for the benefit of all of our residents. And I always urge each of us to take a moment each day to reflect on that personal moment that makes each of these reflections meaningful in a way which isn't just a statement. You look around at something that has an impact on your life, whether it's where you live, or what you're doing, or something that you see or feel or touch, reminds you of the remarkable stewardship that's happened here for the millennia from the nations. That brings it back to a real sense of acknowledgement of things. So with that, I ask each of us to find that moment and to raise your hands and your hearts and minds at one moment and say thank you. And I should to all of our friends.
Thank you very much. All right. First up, we are lucky to have a presentation by Gillian Lindquist on Restorative Justice Victoria. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again.
She was at our council meeting last night.
Yes.
Gillian, I'm turning it over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, Maris. Hi, everyone. Is this okay? Hi. I think Colette's going to work with my PowerPoint. All right, we can. Oh,
Greg, you just could have got it on there.
okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, good. Thanks. Oh, Zoom. Every day there has to be some Zoom debacle. That's my experience. Yeah, so my name is Gillian. I'm the Executive Director of Restorative Justice Victoria. I'm grateful to be here with you all today to tell you about the work that we've been doing broadly, but of course more specifically with the Victoria Police Department. For those who are less familiar with our organization, I'll just tell you a little bit about who we are. We've been around since 2002. We're a not-for-profit organization developed by a group of concerned citizens that wanted to see an RJ program in our region. We've been working with Vic PD since 2005. We did a pilot with Vic PD in 2005, 2006, and after that, we signed an MOU with Vic PD and have been working with the department ever since. We're a pretty small organization. We have 5 staff, but we also have about 60 volunteers that support our services. Around 30 of those are people we recruit and train from the community to help with our direct service delivery. We work with youth and adult victims and offenders from minor to more serious crimes. We typically receive about 75 to 125 referrals per year, and we get them from a variety of sources. So we have MOUs with 3 police departments, also with BC Prosecution Services, and then we get referrals through probation, judiciary, schools. People can self-refer, so a variety of sources, but the vast majority of our referrals always come from the criminal legal system and predominantly through police and Crown, and our services are free to the public. Next slide. So this just gives you a breakdown. I'm here to speak about 2021 and 2022, and then also more importantly to look to the future as well, what we're doing right now and what we have planned for the next year. So in combination 2021, 2022, these are the referrals that we received from our organization, the sources. We received a total of 142 referrals, and 33 of those, which made up about 23%, came directly from the Victoria Police Department. In terms of the referrals that we received from Crown Council, I have a little asterisk there because although we received 46 referrals from Crown, 4 of those were initiated by the Victoria Police Department. So what that means is when the police officer did their investigation and submitted their RCC to Crown, they made a recommendation for restorative justice, and that recommendation was followed through on. So the referral came from Crown Council, but it actually started at the police level. Go to the next slide. So these are the types of referrals that we dealt with that were referred by Vic PD in 2021, 2022. I did include those 4 referrals that came from the Crown's office, which results in a total of 37 referrals. The most common offenses that we dealt with were mischief, offense, and theft. And then there's a variety of other offenses. As you'll see, assault and violent offenses or violent crime really have become more of a norm for our organization. Historically, restorative justice was used, especially at the police level, to deal with a lot of property-related offenses. And over the years, Due to a number of factors, we started to really see a real wide range of offenses being referred to our organization. Go to the next slide. So I'm going to tell you, I have some quotes. If you see the little writing at the bottom, I have a few, I just threw in some client quotes throughout just to spice things up. But I'm going to talk a little bit about our outcomes, but first I'll tell you briefly about our process, just so you know what the outcomes entail. So when we receive a referral to our organization, the first thing we do is look at the paperwork. We do an intake and assessment phase where we talk to the victim, the offenders, others impacted, to discuss the appropriateness and ensure the case is appropriate for restorative justice. Assuming it is, we go into a preparation stage, getting folks ready to engage in the process. We have a dialogue, which when people think about restorative justice, this is what often comes to mind, sort of a circle or a meeting between the offender and victims and others who might have been impacted. In our process, we allow victims to decide if they want to participate directly in that dialogue. It's completely optional for them. If they don't want to come in person, then we give them a variety of other options for how they could communicate or be involved in that interaction through things like letter writing, video sharing, sending someone on their behalf, the use of surrogate victims and those sorts of things. Out of the dialogue comes an agreement that the offender is doing to address the harms, and the final stage of the process is them completing those terms in the community, us keeping victims and others up to date, and then we close the file at completion. Our referrals can really range in time, in terms of length of time. The more minor offenses might run 3 or 4 months. In the more serious cases that we deal with, the process can go up to a year in length. Go to the next slide. So in terms of outcomes, when I submitted, I was supposed to be here in February and was very ill and did not come. And so when I had submitted my materials at that point, there were still 2 files that were ongoing, but those have now closed up. So this is a bit of an updated version. So in terms of the referrals that we received from Victoria Police, either directly or through recommendation to Crown, 37 cases, 31 of them completed that process that I described in full. 1 partially completed. The accused in that instance had been in recovery when the file was referred and doing quite well. He did re-engage with substance use and he came into a place in his life where he no longer participated in the process. 5 referrals were sent back during the intake stage. 2 of them were because we couldn't reach the offender. In 2 of them, when we did talk to the SOC, they did not consent to participating in restorative justice. And in 1, the SOC did not accept responsibility for the offense, which is a requirement for our process. When we send files back to police at the intake stage, they can be forwarded to Crown. So that's part of the reason why we do a really robust intake process. Any files that are not going to be successful, we want to identify that at the outset, because then we can send it back to the referring member and they can put the matter forward to Crown at their discretion. We go to the next slide. People are often curious about what do people do as part of the agreement process. If somebody's committed a harm, an offense in the community, what types of outcomes are we seeing in our process in terms of what are people doing to make things right and address the circumstances in their life that might have led to some of the choices that they were making. And so I just made a list of some of the common things that we see here. It's really common for victims to receive financial restitution. We facilitate thousands of dollars of restitution for victims every year. Those have to be related to specific harms that are identifiable. We don't do anything like pain and suffering or anything like that, but there might be damage to property. Somebody might have had to take time off work. Maybe somebody's had to access counseling supports. There's costs associated with those things. And so we do try and facilitate the restitution of those whenever we can. A lot of the clients that we work with attend counseling, do things to give back to the community, like conduct volunteer work, donate to community organizations. We see a lot of letters of apology or gifts to people that have been impacted by their actions. Things to support addictions and recovery, researching, discussing, understanding the impacts of specific harms is really common. So for example, we had a case that came through Crown from the West Shore a little while ago where a woman had assaulted a number of police officers. And even throughout the process, even though one of the members attended the dialogue, she still struggled to understand what it's like to be a member and to experience violence when you're in your own workplace. And so part of what she did for her agreement was to research and read about 20 police officers who'd either lost their lives on the job or who had experienced really serious trauma as a result of their working. And so that was really helpful for her to just see real people's experiences and understand about the bigger impact for action. So that's an example of that. We do a lot of things around creating plans for budgeting, communication, boundaries, and self-care, really some lifestyle stuff. Oftentimes when we're working with folks who have caused harm, there's a number of things that are sort of going, there can be a number of things in their lives that are going a bit sideways. And we really want to identify those and put some structures in place around that. We do quite a bit of courses on violence prevention, non-violent communication skills, and emotional regulation, which you could also describe as anger management. A lot of those services we offer in-house because we have a number of counselors who work at our organization who can do that one-to-one work with offenders. We found that a lot of those services are actually quite lacking in the community, so we've had to bring some of those things into our program. Self-reflection writing and self-development reading, and then prioritizing things that are just wellness strategies for folks that we're working with. You can go to the next slide. Maybe I'll just pause here quickly because I'm gonna just turn to the future and talk a little bit about where we're at and where we're going. But I did just want to give a moment to see, were there any questions about the statistics or the work we've done over the last 2 years that folks have? Yes.
Just a quick question. You mentioned self-referrals. There were a few of them. What's particularly motivating for someone to offer to volunteer to go through the program?
Yeah, there can be a lot of different things that motivate somebody. One of the things that we do see more frequently now is people who have either caused or experienced sexualized violence that want a restorative process in response to that. So we do see quite a bit of folks contacting us about that. We do have some family-related events that occur. Some of those may or may not reach the threshold of a criminal offense, but the family does not want to maybe report to police or go through a criminal justice process. They don't think that would be helpful and could cause more disruption in the family. And so they're looking to have a restorative process. We do get a lot of inquiries. So one of the things that's interesting about 2021 and 2022, it was this year where we saw this massive increase in people reaching out to our organization directly. We've never experienced that before. Historically, all of our referrals came typically from the criminal justice system. And I think as understanding of restorative justice gets out there and people are looking for options, they're starting to contact us directly. So in 2021, 2022, we were keeping some of those statistics in our file numbers, and we've now pulled it out because I think right now in 2023, we've already had about 30 community inquiries. And so we're gonna have to create actually a position in our organization that just does intake and assessment on community-based referrals, because there's a lot of complexity to that, tons, legally, for the criminal justice system, just for our organization. One of the challenges, do we reach out to the other side? So for example, if somebody comes to us and says, I was sexually assaulted, we're not investigators. There's a whole bunch of front end stuff that we can't take on. And so it's a complicated thing that we're trying to navigate, but we are seeing a really big increase in those situations. You're welcome. Okay, all right, so where we're at in terms of increasing the use of restorative justice at the department, as I included in my written report, we have seen a real decrease in referrals over the last few years. And I think there's a whole bunch of different reasons for that. I think COVID's been a very difficult time. And I know from speaking to other RJ programs across the province, it's a pretty common thing. We were in the department on a regular basis, but once COVID hit, of course, we had to stop doing that. That impacted things. And so working with Jason and working with Colin and of course Sergeant Millard, who's been our police liaison officer for many, many years, we've been trying to respond to that in a good way. And there's a number of things that we're working on currently that are actually proving to be very helpful, to the point where I'm sort of like, oh gosh, are now we going to get so many referrals that we can't handle it? Because I think at this point we're getting about 1 to 2 a week, which is a lot for us. But these are some of the things that we've been working on. So we of course have Sergeant Millard in his new position as Community Court NCO. Sean can tell you a little bit more about what he's doing there. I think it's really interesting, and he can tell you about some of the examples of what's happening there. Another thing that we're doing is I come in and speak to all new recruits for 2 hours during their block 2, and that's been great to provide some education. There's not a lot of education that members are getting at the JI about restorative justice. And partly the complexity of that is how it works in each community is really diverse. So it's difficult for the JI to kind of take that on beyond teaching broad concepts. So I've been coming in and speaking, doing a 2-hour presentation with the new members. And then we also just recently made it a requirement that during their Block 2, members are to refer a file to restorative justice. And that's been going really, really well. And the goal is that not only do they refer a file to restorative justice, but they also attend the dialogue. So that meeting with the offender. And we just had one the other day where a new recruit and her partner came to a dialogue in an assault case that was recently referred. So we're already seeing a really positive response to that. We've had a number of referrals from new recruits in the last month. The other thing that we did, you might have noticed in the atrium area, we put up a poster board with a very simple description of this is how you refer directly from the department, this is how you refer through Crown. So it's just a nice visual to have. So if somebody says, hey, I want to do this, it's really accessible. I'm back here at the department 2 hours every week. So I come in on Tuesdays from 9:30 to 11:30. It's a great time to connect with Sean and talk about cases. It's also a time that members or new recruits can come and talk to me as well about specific cases or just to get to know each other a little bit. We have a shoplifting pilot that we're just launching where we are going to be working with one retailer to try and make referrals from loss prevention officers much more accessible. So there's a way that they can submit their report directly to records. And the other goal is that there won't require so much member involvement. So it's an easier way to get reporting happening, getting a response like restorative justice without causing too much resources on the frontline members. And then we're also collaborating with the new Indigenous Justice Program, which is run out of the Aboriginal Coalition to End Homelessness. And we're working with them to refer directly to each other and to work together, in particular on cases where one of the parties might be Indigenous and one of them might not be. So for example, we're potentially, it's not come through yet, but going to be collaborating on a case where the victim is Indigenous and where the offender is not. And so they will support the victim and then we'll work with the offender to hopefully get to a place where they can have a meeting to do some repair and healing around that harm. So that's really great, very exciting. It's new, they're new and just getting up and running, but we're having a really good start and there's a lot of interest in working together. So those are some of the things that we're working on. I'm really excited. Like I said, I'm also a bit nervous because it might turn into a bit of an avalanche of cases, but we'll respond as we always do. And we are really grateful to see the numbers picking up again. You can go to the next slide, I think. Oh, yeah, I just wanted to mention quickly a couple of the projects that we're working on. We are currently involved in a 2-year project funded by Community Safety and Crime Prevention to do an external evaluation of our program. And so it's a very robust project. I won't go into all the details, but what the outcome of that is going to be a really broad evaluation report that will speak to our historical data. We have about 11 years of client data. As well, the evaluator is going to be interviewing clients who are just exiting the process. And the goal is to really determine what effect are we having in the community and people's lives. We want to know and understand that. I think we know from anecdotally that it's positive, but what exactly does that look like? And be able to articulate that to our partners and to our funders. And of course, to improve our services, we want to get honest feedback. There's things we could be doing differently. We're also doing a capacity building project to work in cases of sexualized violence. It's a two-pronged project. The first piece is being funded by the United Way and the second piece is being funded by the Gender Equity Fund. And so one of the things that we've observed is an increase in referrals for sexualized violence, but there is just not a lot of capacity actually anywhere in Canada for doing restorative justice in these types of cases. There's a gap there. And so we're trying to respond. We're doing consultations with knowledge keepers. We're doing specialized training. We're developing a roster of practitioners and a community of practice that will run over the course of about a year. So it'll help really build our organizational capacity to do this work safely and well, not just for the clients that we're serving, but also for ourselves. Sexualized violence is commonplace. It's something that touches a lot of people's lives. And we want to be honest about the fact that it can trigger our own experience as well. And we need to be showing up safely and in a good way for the people that we're working with. The last one is the analysis of the use of restorative justice in hate-motivated crimes and identity-based harms. This is the literature on hate-motivated crimes is indicating that restorative justice has a lot of promise. But again, there's a real lack of capacity. Really, nobody is doing this work. So this is a project that's being funded by Public Safety Canada, where we're going to be collaborating with a restorative justice program in Waterloo and another one in Newfoundland and Labrador, really to do an analysis. We aren't going to be doing any casework yet, nothing on the ground, but we want to really explore this issue. Restorative justice is not one size fits all. When we're doing cases like sexualized violence, like hate motivated crimes, we really need to be adapting our process to make it suitable for those cases. And so that's what we're working to understand with this project. It'll go over the course of 2 years. When the project is complete, we're going to submit our materials to Public Safety Canada with sort of maybe a phase 2. If we think it's viable, if we think we can do it well, then we'll be looking for pilot funding to actually deliver the service. So that's what we're imagining. We don't know yet how it's going to go, but that's what we're imagining. Okay, that's it. I think that's the end of my presentation. One of the things I'll just quickly add for those who don't know is I am stepping down from my role. I'm not leaving the organization. I am actually going back to school. I'm going to do graduate studies, actually to take a master's in counseling, because similar to what we're talking here, restorative justice is being tasked with very serious harms. And I think there's a lot to say about integrating a therapeutic approach to the work. And that's my passion. And that's what I'm going to school for. I can't do the ED role and that at the same time. So I'm going down into an associate director role. I'm still going to be supporting the organization and around, but I don't know if I'm going to be here doing these reports any longer. And so I just wanted to give you that heads up and just let you know, and thank you really for many years of support. You will still see me. This is not a goodbye, but if you hear something or a rumbling, I wanted to be the one to explain it to you firsthand. Yeah, thank you.
Jillian, thank you so much, and congratulations, and we look forward to your next steps and how that will come back and help us all as well. I'm going to open it up for questions and look around at board members. So you did an amazing job. There's only one question so far. Go ahead, Paul.
My name's Paul. I'm one of the newer board members. So this is a great presentation, and it's certainly interesting. Just in the regards to, you mentioned the memorandum of understanding that was signed back in 2005-06. That still lives, still breathing. Doesn't need to be modified. It still works for. And that's a loaded question, and I did that.
I'm looking to tell.
I know that. I can feel the energy. And then I guess the second question, not related to this, is just the stats are very interesting, and I'm curious: is there any? I don't want to use the word tracking, but for somebody that goes through this program, is there any way of knowing whether they're a repeat offender, kind of again, like what? Like, is there any types of stats on that? Just trying to figure out, what kind of how that works. So those are kind of my two different kind of questions there.
Sure.
Thanks. Loaded ones.
Yeah, no, good. I like beefy questions. As it relates to the MOU, there's sort of 3 documents that I think 3, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, that sort of govern our work with the Victoria Police. So one is our MOU. It's a very old document, but it's quite basic. The other thing that we have is a policy. VPD has a policy and a procedures document. Those were updated last year. I believe it was last year. It might have been 2021. And so those are in good shape, I think. And then I think the MOU is fine. I think it's okay. Might need to be revisited. Any thoughts? Yeah, we can have a look. Pardon?
We did update it a couple years ago.
Updated it a couple of years ago? Okay.
The policy is robust, and so are the SOPs. They're very fresh.
Yeah, and then this question about recidivism, there's maybe two answers to that, and I'd also pass it over to Sean, maybe 2 as well.
I'm Sean Millard. I've been involved with restorative justice for the last 10 years, and I got involved with a file that I wanted nothing to do with, and I ended up going to restorative justice, and I wanted nothing to do with it. And then I saw the process and really realized the benefits of it. So at that time I was in patrol, and then I went to a community resource officer. And in that position, I was able to take restorative justice on for the department and kind of share with other people what it's done for me and what it could do for them. one of the things that I looked at was the effectiveness of restorative justice. I wasn't about to spend time with something unless it is effective. So we actually did a recidivism study. Or I conducted one with the offenders that we had. And I think the percent was 3% of the people that we sent through restorative justice were reoffenders compared to people that were through the court system. Now, the caveat to that is the people that are going through the court system oftentimes are repeat offenders in the first place. Drug addicts, people with addiction issues that stole, people that we deal with through restorative justice was typically not just a one-off, but it was going down the path but not committed to that path. So that answers your question. I think for the recidivism rate, they've stayed on the path. I should actually go back and do it again. Yeah. it was-
Interesting to do again.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a ton of research on restorative justice and recidivism. And there's consensus in the literature that restorative justice does reduce repeat offending. The amounts differ very greatly. You know, reductions can be like 5% to 80%, very much dependent on the program and who they're working with and what they're doing. But I think we can with confidence say that restorative, based on our own experience, both from the project that Sean's referring to and our anecdotal experience, and then all of the literature that exists out there, that restorative justice does repeat.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna go to Michaela. And we'll wrap it up.
Me?
Go for it.
Okay, I just wanted to thank you, Jillian, for the work that you do. I've been familiar with you and the work that you're doing in restorative justice for a long time, and I think it's so valuable and important. And I did notice the posting for your position, so I'm thrilled to hear that you're continuing on with the organization doing the important work that you do. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Thanks, Michaela.
Thank you. Okay, just if you could finish off with the positive side of what effect this has on the victims as well.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday. Yeah, I think it can be really easy in our world, and probably in your world, because the criminal justice system it can be pretty offender focused, right? When we're thinking about outcomes, that's what we're often thinking about, recidivism and those sorts of things. And so for us, Barb asked this question yesterday, and I always love speaking to the fact what restorative justice offers to victims and survivors. And we really pride ourselves on being a victim-centered organization. And so what that means is when a harm occurs, we always put the needs of victims first. We're thinking, how have they been harmed and what do they need in response to this? And that serves as the justice needs that we're working towards. One of the great things about restorative justice is it just kind of works well with the trauma-informed lens. There's a lot of things about the practice that correlate nicely with working in that way. And then within our organization, we provide a spectrum of victim involvement, which was something that we actually started doing early on, which is really allowing victims to have a say in what the process looks like and their involvement in it, which is really key. So when we're working with survivors, what we see is they're getting answers to the questions that they want asked. There can be a trial, and I hear survivors say, they didn't talk about anything that mattered to me, they talked about evidence and they talked about those sorts of things. And so the other thing is they're getting a chance to talk to the offenders about how they've been impacted. And what we hear a lot from survivors is they feel that influenced the offender. They're thinking my participation in this process probably reduced the likelihood that they're going to hurt somebody else. And that feels really, really good for survivors. And so, having a process that's really centered around their needs and gives them a lot of choice, they're experiencing a lot of healing through those processes. So yeah, it's really great. It's wonderful to work in a process where we really feel that everybody leaves better off than they walked in the door, victims and offenders.
Jillian, thank you so much. We
Yes.
really appreciate your time, your energy, your compassion, and look forward to working with you further.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And if you ever want to reach out to me directly, please do. And I'm at the department now. Tuesday mornings, I'm here. If you want to come talk to me, you can find me in Sean's office.
All right, board, we'll move on. Are there any declarations of conflict with respect to items on the agenda? There are none, so I would look for a motion to adopt the agenda. John and Bella, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion is carried. We have the minutes of the public meeting of March 21st. Motion to adopt, please. Thank you, Paul. Seconder, Sean. Any errors, omissions, changes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion's carried. We move down to board co-chairs update, and I'll start with co-chair Alto's update.
Really, the only thing I'd like to report on is the investigation that I was directed to do with regard to the potential media training. And so I've been in touch with Jim Beatty, who is the identified person that we discussed as a possible facilitator. And he is very excited about the possibility of joining us and providing some of his expertise and advice. Would require about an hour and a half to 2 hours in an agenda, but was suggested that a committee agenda might be most accommodating for that, and has suggested June 6th. So I guess I would leave that with the board members to determine whether that would be an appropriate use of time, and if so then I can get them to provide a detailed proposal.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments around this? This has been in the works for a bit, and it sounds like we will have our new board members as well to be able to attend that, given that it'll be in June now. From my perspective, I just wanted to go back where we are doing our retreat board planning session on May 3rd. During that time, we have Kevin Elder, who is a former board member, will be facilitating that. And it will be approximately 4 hours. It will include social lunch, but a lot of learning, a lot of legwork will go on in the beginning. We're going to be talking about committees at that time. Marianne and I have been tossing this around. I've been talking to different members of the board. Because if we end up with full complement at the board, we want to look at using your resource in the best way possible. And right now, we have everyone at committees doing all the work at that time, and then we come to the board and it's already basically been done and the discussion is done. And that's not fair to the public to understand how we do business either. I have been attending the BC government sponsored Watson module training. I think, Sean, you have attended the first module, did you?
No, not yet. I tried to, but there's schedule conflict.
There are no-
All I think my board schedule.
There are a number of sessions going to go on this year. It is something that they want to make mandatory to all board members. And based on the 2 sessions that I've had, I highly recommend it. We have gone through discussions around policy work, board orientation practices, conflict of interest policies, setting up agendas, forward calendars, the importance of the board manual, the relationships between board members, evaluations. So it's just packed full of information, and so you're going to hear me bring forward different items. The very first one that I'm going to bring forward to the next committee meeting is the idea of a vice chair. Initially, it just really didn't ring with me because we have 2 co-chairs. But a vice chair position, it could be extremely valuable when we look at conflict of interest. And when you look at conflict of interest, it's usually both co-chairs would likely have that conflict. And so they can also be helpful in terms of many other things. So I will bring that forward to the governance committee. The other item I just wanted to mention is that I have been appointed to the UBCM committee, which is reviewing the modernization of policing and the act. I've been appointed to December 23rd. Very interesting conversations, which I can't share with you, but when the report comes out, I think it's very interesting to hear the different perspectives across BC. Any questions on that report? All right, so seeing none, I will move down to committees update, and we have a motion coming from, we have 2 motions coming from governance. So I will look to Sean to put forward the, first of all, the resolution for BCAPB AGM.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. So we have first, we have a motion here for us. I'll read the motion out. That the board putting forward the following resolution at a 2023 BCAPB AGM for consideration. Whereas the government of BC formed an all-party committee in 2021 to make recommendations on reform related to modernization and sustainability of policing. And whereas a report has been received by government and among the recommendations made, amalgamation of police services on a regional basis where there are opportunities to address fragmentation and ensure equitable access to policing and public safety. Therefore, be resolved, the BCAPB encouraged the provincial government, to initiate discussions towards achievement of a regionalized police force in Greater Victoria and the Lower Mainland. So that's the motion there, Chair. I would like to move that motion.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Bella. Do you wish to speak further to it?
Just for the public, the BCAPB is a British Columbia Association of Police Boards that meets annually, and each year there is a call for motions by different boards throughout the province, and this is our motion that we wish to bring forward. And of course, this is related to item C. You'll see that we are will be hopefully passing a motion to send one of our board members to Nelson, whereas the event will be. And of course, we also have another board member who also happens to be the president of BCAPB, which is Charlotte Huber. So we'll have that individual there as well, just for public wondering, give you a head count of how many folks can attend. So really, this is just an opportunity for boards to, bring their sort of side or vision of what they like to see being done on a provincial level, and what they would like to see the BCAPB to do for them as advocates, as they are usually for all boards for the province.
Thank you, Bella. Would you like to say anything?
Although this is not an automatic thing, then regional policing becomes a thing. Anything to help dial forward is really important. We see budget constraints and recruitment constraints, and all that can be alleviated by having a regional police force. So I'm excited for this resolution, and I also hope that once this is passed, hopefully we can also get a BC police force placing the RCMP as well. So I'm excited for this motion to come forward.
Thank you. Yeah, this is to heighten the dialogue, make sure that there's more awareness out there, because this is something that this board has put forward year after year after year after year, and we need to gather more people around and get a greater voice. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion's carried. Second motion, Sean?
Yes, so related to BCAPB, we need a motion to approve the board member Michaela Hayes be allowed to attend the 2023 BCAPB conference in AGM Nelson on our behalf. I'd like to move that.
Is there a seconder? Ms. Paul, do you wish to speak further to it?
No, I just said this is a formal process that for the public, that anytime we send board members to any conference, we do this in public session, so they're aware of the process and where we're sending folks to. And I guess for public, usually we ask our board members to report back to us in public as well, their learnings. So we will have, they will have an opportunity to sort of learn, or from us and all together, what exactly is talked about. And these conferences is also like learnings, there's opportunities to obviously meet other boards, to learn best practices, and as you said, Chair, to heighten awareness of certain policies and conversations up at the provincial level.
Thank you. Paul, do you wish to speak?
No, I think it's self-explanatory.
Okay. And the other thing is that when a resolution comes from a board, having a member of the board there to speak to it helps to move the conversation along. All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Thanks, Michaela. We don't have a report from finance or HR. I'll look to the finance chair. Do you wish to make any comment?
I'll speak very briefly to the one item that's on the committee. The Esquimalt Council has notified us, the board, that they voted to deny several police budget line items. And the finance committee will follow up on that and decide next steps at the next finance committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any further discussion on committee updates? Being none. Board member engagement updates. This is something that, again, we're hopefully going to have further discussion on how do we engage with the public. And part of that also is how do we get the public in the room with us? This is a challenge that COVID sort of put on the back burner, but we need to figure something out so that we can have people coming and being part of our board meeting and being aware. Anyone wish to speak to anything they've done recently? All right, okay. BC Association of Police Board Directors update. We don't have the BC Association Police Board Director. Chief Constable update. Chief.
Sure, perfect, thanks. So on the very end of your package on page 16 is my monthly activity report. I'll just cover off a couple highlights, and I've got a couple operational updates, and I'd like Inspector Connor King to provide the last two updates for the board. So just looking at my activity sheet, couple community engagement events I wanted to highlight for you. The board may or may not be aware, but the Victoria Police Department worked closely with the Western Hockey League Victoria Royals hockey team, and we actually sponsor their community service award. So it's the player that goes out, engages the multiple community, and so I had the opportunity to hand the award out at the last home game. I was with Mayor Desjardins in the township and participated in the annual Michael Dunahee Keep Hope Alive run. I served Easter lunch at Our Place Society. There's a number of community leaders and elected officials that did that over the Easter long weekend. We've got a new reserve class that started a couple weeks ago. We have 15 members in the class, 13 Vic PD, 1 member from Oak Bay, 1 from Central Saanich. I came in the orientation day of the class and introduced myself and welcomed them to the Vic PD Reserve Program. Inspector Mike Brown and I saw the mayor, Mayor Desjardins, and Esquimalt at the Lions Easter Extravaganza, Easter egg hunt. It was ECOM, I went out to ECOM and recognized the staff during 911 Awareness Week. So that was last week. I attended the sculpture splash in the township over the weekend. And yesterday presented the quarter 4 report for the community safety report card to Esquimalt Mayor and Council. And joining me was Cheryl from our Community Engagement Division and Inspector Mike Brown. And tonight, during National Volunteer Week, we have an opportunity, I think board members did receive an invitation to honor and just pay tribute to our volunteers and our reserves right after this particular board meeting. So I'll just move quickly to the 2 updates that I have that I wanted to highlight. Again, another busy month for Vic PD, but a couple key areas that I wanted to highlight in case you didn't see the news release. So you may recall that in November, Vic PD began receiving reports of women that were being sprayed and splashed with some sort of an unknown liquid when they were either walking or sitting, and some of the women described kind of a burning sensation that probably could be reported as some sort of a chemical or unknown liquid or believed to be corrosive substance. These women were ranging from as young as 15 years old to 48. We started an investigation. We actually did have a person of interest, and we made an arrest actually right around New Year's. And our major crimes unit then asked people for anyone who maybe was a potential witness or any additional victims that come forward that perhaps may not have reported this incident. And I wanted to just share with you that our major crimes unit on a few weeks ago now have formally charged an individual with 10 counts of sexual assault with a weapon. So working closely with the Crown Council, and this individual is currently on by conditions as awaiting trial. The second update I have is just a really great work that's being done in our newly restructured general investigation section that's led by Inspector Grant Hamilton. So you may have caught this news release, but we recovered $94,000 in stolen merchandise, $19,000 in currency, and over 2.5 kilograms of drugs during an investigation into an organized retail theft operation. So it's important for the board to kind of hear the complexity of what criminals will go to. So it's set up, it's sophisticated to the point where there's so much property that's being brought in. And individuals would contact a centralized phone number and they would arrange to sell stolen property, or they'd be given a list. Here's the property that we're looking for, go get this. And in exchange, they'd be given drugs. And of course, that property would then be sold at a discounted rate out on our streets. And they even had a driver lined up that would meet the seller who would accept the stolen property in exchange for drugs. So highly sophisticated. These are very complex investigations, and our general investigation section did an amazing job in uncovering what was happening right here in our community, and in leading to a number of charges from that. And we did a news release on that we're quite proud of. And I'll turn it over to Inspector Connor King for 2 other updates, and that'll be my update for this quarter.
Thanks, Chief. I'll update on 2 files that the Major Crimes Unit has recently concluded. The first, you'll probably recall the fire at the house adjacent to the Ukrainian church at the intersection of Cook and Caledonia. That occurred on April 20th of last year, middle of the night. The 5 residents of the home woke up to discover that the front door area of the house was involved in flames. 2 adults and 3 children fled from the home. One of the children was badly injured as she escaped. Patrol officers responded, conducted the initial part of the investigation, transferred it to Major Crimes. Over the course of the last 12 months, we've been investigating this offense, obviously very, very serious offense. And initially we thought that potentially there was a link to a hate crime, being the Ukrainian church, etc. Over the course of the investigation, we determined that it was actually the perpetrator, Walter Theo Machinsky, had a personal relationship with the victims involved, and he was subsequently arrested on April 5th of this year and charged with 1 count of arson and 1 count of disregard for human life, and he was in the 9-hole residence. So this was an extensive investigation that took about 12 months for us to complete. We're very happy with the conclusion, and he remains in custody. Second event is more recent. This was an individual that was gravely injured on March 6th in essentially a rooming home in the 400 block of Chester Avenue here in Victoria. Patrol officers again responded to this, discovered this individual was badly injured. In the course of investigation, they also discovered that inside one of the residences, the suspect's residence in the building at the 400 block of Chester, was what looked like a drug lab or a methamphetamine lab. It was incredibly sophisticated setup of glassware and cooking apparatuses, etc. And that required us to call out the clandestine laboratory enforcement response team attended from Vancouver with all their kit and equipment. And very labor intensive, occupied a great deal of patrol officers' time, investigators' time initially. Within 24 hours, we arrested the suspect in this assault. And then sadly on March 5th, the victim succumbed to his injuries, and this transitioned from an assault investigation to a homicide investigation. Our Major Crimes Unit determined to not turn the file over to the Vancouver Island Major Crimes Unit, but rather to retain the file here at Vic PD because so much work were completed on it. We're happy to say that obviously with the suspect in custody, he remains in custody, and we are bringing this homicide conclusion to so far a successful
Thank you. Any questions for the chief's report and or Inspector King? Okay, Chief, you want to just touch on your equity, diversion, and inclusion?
Yep, sure. So just 2 updates. It's again on page 16 of 16. So I touched on this. It was I think the day of the board meeting. I just didn't have it in the package there. There's a new imam at the Masjid Al Iman on Quadra Street, and so I had an opportunity to meet him and exchange numbers, and I plan on meeting him in the future when we have more time. And then the last update was the Saki celebrations at the Sikh temple on Topaz. And so Mayor Alto, nice seeing you there, and thank you for providing some remarks there. And so that was a well-attended event, and Staff Sergeant Jennings attended with me. She also was representing not only Vic PD, but the Greater Victoria Police Diversity Advisory Committee that was on Sunday. Thank you.
Fantastic. Any questions? Seeing none. Just before I close the meeting and ask for a motion to adjourn, I just want also touch on the fact that this is National Volunteer Week. The theme for this year is volunteering weaves us together. And having been a part of 3 separate events this last weekend and seeing Vic PD at all of those events, and our volunteers out helping with everything from 5-kilometer run to attending our sculpture splash to just doing amazing things. Our volunteers really are our backbone. And so I wish to extend to them on behalf of the board our thanks for all they do in both communities. And it really is truly weaving together because there's no border in the weave when it comes to volunteers. So on that note, I will look for a motion to adjourn, and thanks to members of the public for attending.